Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop, Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton, and I'm your host. And tonight, we have another program full of brand new candidates. And we're very excited about bringing everyone to you. So we're going to hop right into it. Our very first candidate is a newbie for the House of Delegates. She's laughing at me calling him a newbie. He is Reed Heddleson, and he is running for the District 51 seat, which is down sort of near, and I'm looking at it, it's below Manassas. We're going to put it up on the screen behind us so that everybody else can take a look at it. You are running against an incumbent. You're running as a Democrat. So correct. I want to welcome you to the show, Reed. It's great to have you.
Well, thank you so much, Bettina. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let me introduce you a little bit to our audience. You were a pilot in the Air Force. You served for 26 years.
Correct.
Retired as a colonel. And then you went to a big defense and IT contractor, and you managed 200 scientists and engineers, and retired from there just last year as a senior vice president. And I noted that the company actually employs 10,000 veterans, which I thought was wonderful, given the problems veterans have in finding jobs. That particular company has a good record on that. So, and now you're retired, and now you're a graduate from VMI. You have a bachelor's in economics. You have an MBA in finance from Emory. Sound like wonderful qualifications to get involved with politics in Virginia and budget issues. So why are you running? It sounds like you've had two really full careers.
True. And
the House of Delegates is, at least the way I look at the House of Delegates, it's full of a bunch of crazy people.
Well, actually, I'm deeply flattered that you called me new at something at my age. That's wonderful. The reason I'm running is because I believe the state is headed in the wrong direction, and I've spent a lot of my life in Virginia, and I would like to see it turned around. And so I'm running because I think we've been focused for the last few years on issues that have nothing to do with governance. We're fighting ideological battles in Richmond. And the reason I'm running is I think we need to get back to governing the state.
Well, what are you, we've done some big things in the past year, like transportation. There was the big transportation bill. And I saw that your opponent voted against it. How would you have done that?
Well, actually, that's what I think we need to do. When I talk about governance, we need to get back to working on our infrastructure. We need to invest in the state. I would have voted for the transportation package. It was a Republican governor's bill, but that's what a compromise is. I'm willing to compromise when it's in the best interest of the district. Transportation is probably the primary issue in Prince William County. We spend far too much time in our automobiles going to and from work. And when I've talked to people within the district, they agree with that. And so I would have supported the bill. It's what Rich Anderson ran on 4 years ago. He talked about education and transportation, but he's backed away from those, and he spends his time focused on extreme issues, mostly having to do with what we do with our bodies and what rights women have as far as healthcare choices. So I think it's time to get back to governing, because that's the future of the state.
Well, let's talk about some other issues that you've mentioned. I see it on your webpage and things like that, which one of them is education. Now,
education.
Your children all went through public schools,
yes,
as I recall.
Yes.
And I know there was, your opponent voted to cut $620 million in education funding, and would increase the classroom sizes and all that type of stuff. What do you want to do with education?
Well, education is quite simply an investment in our future. I went to VMI. I went to VMI on an ROTC scholarship. I would not have been able to go. I came from West Virginia to go to VMI. I would not have been able to go to school had the citizens of the Republic not invested in me. We need to invest in our children. We are walking away from our K through 12 in Prince William County, and as a state, we're walking away from probably the finest public state university system in the country. When I went to VMI, over 50% of the funds at VMI were state funds. Now they're less than 20%. If you talk to Dave Toscano, which I know you know is the delegate out of Charlottesville, he will tell you that the state of North Carolina spends $22,000 per student at UNC. The state of Virginia spends $8,000 per student. How long do you think we're going to remain the #1 public state university system in the country? So, you know, we have to get back to investing in our children. The crisis is real. In Prince William County, we have the largest class sizes in the state. We have the second lowest teacher salaries in the area. And if you combine that with layering standards testing requirements on teachers, we have literally unmotivated our young teaching staff, and we're in danger of losing them. And I hear this, it's a constant theme coming from educators, is we are so concerned about younger teachers leaving the profession. And we have got to invest in that. So to get our class size down, I mean, class size determines whether you're going to teach, whether you're going to maintain discipline and control in the classroom, and we need to get back to basics as opposed to continually fixing on ideological battles.
Well, and how do you feel about the bill, and it was passed last year, on education, where now the state has created this bureaucracy, which I thought interesting, since the Republicans are always small government, and now there's going to be this bureaucracy that grades all of our schools. What do you feel about that? Did you think that was a good idea, or is that just trouble down the road?
I really I feel strongly about education. My grandfather was a school teacher. My mother was a school teacher. I have two son-in-laws. I have a son-in-law who teaches at Austin High, a UVA graduate. My son teaches college. My wife taught nursing at George Mason. I don't support educators. I love them, Bettina. And you know, I think they need our support, and it's clear we're not giving it to them. And so when you talk about programs layering on more requirements, it is ironic that the party that talks about small government seems to, they seem to be interested in layering on many more requirements to our school system at a time when we're not funding it correctly to begin with. And I think we're going to be facing a crisis if we're not already in crisis at this point.
And it was interesting, I didn't realize that your teachers were paid that low. That's a conversation we keep having in Fairfax, because we are competing with Montgomery County.
Right.
And we are very worried, because in addition to our young teachers being discouraged, a lot of the teachers in Fairfax, and maybe Prince William is young, it's a sort of a younger place. People are moving out that way, so maybe your teachers aren't as old as ours, but I keep reading about all of these very experienced teachers who are going to be retiring.
It's interesting to me when we talk about this. You talk about, well, I'm not interested in education or transportation. Yet I would submit to you, what is the first question a mother asks when she's buying a home? What school district am I in?
Exactly.
And then the first question the husband asks is, how long is my commute? So tell me again why it's not in our best interest to invest here. One of the deans at George Mason, Dr. Sencher, the only way George Mason is able to attract entry-level professors is because of the Fairfax school system. They can bring in young professors who can take their children out of private schools and put them into public schools, and so the savings offsets the lower salary they're offered here.
Wow.
So, I mean, you know, that's the kind of thing. When you talk about attracting business to Northern Virginia, and these things all combine, I mean, the rationale for investment is, if you want to attract high technology industry to Northern Virginia, you have to provide services. I mean, we are in competition with, as you said, Maryland. We're in competition with Massachusetts. Companies that employ high technology people, intellectual capital, they're not interested in low taxes, they're interested in services. I mean, look at who we're competing with, Palo Alto and Shanghai for that matter. And that's what the Republican Party doesn't understand, is you have to invest. You have to invest in the future. You're not going to attract businesses. At the same time, we then say, okay, we're going to disenfranchise women's healthcare choices. So if in the next 10 years, 30% of the high technology companies are going to have women CEOs, are they interested in coming to Virginia? Are they interested in going to Maryland? So we're in competition again. You know, when I worked at SAIC, it was interesting. When I went to school, 90% of the engineering and science, engineering students, science students, they look like me. Mm-hmm. Now, 50% of the engineering students are women. So when I was at SAIC, the Asian American woman who just graduated from Virginia Tech is closer to the technology than I am. So we put together a multidisciplinary design team, and we're competing with Boeing, Lockheed, McDonnell Douglas. We have to have the best design solution. She's the closest to the technology, you know. So in that team, we have to make her welcome, so we have the benefit of her knowledge. And when you pass the legislation that we continue to pass in this state, you're saying we're not interested in that. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, our HR people beat us about the head and shoulders. Diversity is the future of this company. And so when I worked for a Fortune 500 company, which is not a bastion of progressive thinking, Bettina.
True.
And our anti-discriminatory policies are greater than Virginia. There's a problem. There's a problem, and we need to address that if we're going to continue to grow and attract business. There's a reason we dropped from #1 to #5, and that's happened in the last 4 years.
And that's something that the Republicans don't talk about. They always hark back to the ratings we got when Mark Warner and Tim Kaine were governor.
Exactly.
And it's been a steady decline. Mm-hmm. Over the last couple of years, and people need to recognize that. And with jobs, particularly in this area, being so critical because of what's happened with the federal government, all of these anti-women, anti-gay, anti-immigrant policies that we've got going in Virginia are just going to kill us on the job creation front.
Well, it's not where business is, Bettina, even regardless of what Ken Cuccinelli says.
And he says a whole lot about that kind of stuff. And your opponent certainly is on the other side of that, as I recall.
He votes on the opposite of every issue. If you want a choice, there will be a choice in our election, I guarantee you.
All right. Well, that's all the voters can ask for is a clear choice, and I think they've certainly got it in your race, Reed. I want to thank you for coming and talking with us. I see a little note saying you're staying on while we talk with Freeda in our next segment, so stay tuned. We're going to be back. We'll have two folks here, and we will be right back.
This is firstgov.gov, where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration. Where's your uncle?
So in the end, it was either take the astronaut gig or come work here. What can I say? Duty called.
Dude, that's my cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's Sam's cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No. Sam's. No.
Just log on or email us and get what you need.
C, change of address form. That's how it's done.
D, driver's license renewal.
E, emailing Social Security information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice, we'll allow it. All right,
What are those?
Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time.
For all your government information, firstgov.gov.
Oh, what have we got here? Sometimes you feel tired. You can't seem to lose those extra pounds off your midsection. And your joints hurt when you take the stairs. Well, you're getting older. But I'm happy to say that there's some simple things we can do to keep you happy and healthy for years to come. We can also lower your risk for some serious diseases the older population is often subject to. Proper nutrition is more important than ever. Your body has changed, you know. Not as many treats. A basic exercise plan, lots of walks and fresh air, and most importantly, come and see me for twice-yearly checkups to help ensure the best possible quality of life. Now, how does that sound? Good boy.
Improve the quality of life for your elderly pet. Schedule twice-yearly checkups that include preventive care and regular lab work. message from the veterinary members of the American Animal Hospital Association.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Bettina Lawton, the host of Inside Scoop Virginia, and we are talking with brand new candidates for the House of Delegate, and we've got a little special person who's not running for the House of Delegate that we're going to have on a little bit later. But I want to bring in to the studio Freeda Cathcart. She is running down near Roanoke, and we were going to have a map of her district, and when you see the map of her district, you will really understand what gerrymandering means. It is a bizarre shaped district. It's like this claw thing going on here. I have a feeling that Democrats are in that middle piece, but I could be wrong. We'll find out. And we still have Reed Heddleson, who has stayed with us. We just were talking with Reed about his race up in Prince William County, so we've got folks in both sides of the state here. But Freeda, I want to welcome you to the show. You're Skyping in, so they'll put you up instead of your map, I think. And so we'll get that going. And let me introduce you a little bit while the technology people get all that done for you. You were a graduate of Roanoke College. You've been a teacher. You've been in the insurance industry. You were a fellow in the Life Management Institute, specializing in human resources. So you've got all kinds of different things you've done. And I take it from having gone to Roanoke College, are you originally from the Roanoke area?
No, I grew up in New York.
Oh, whoa!
Yeah. I came down here to go to Roanoke College, where I fell in love with my husband, and we stayed here to raise our 4 children.
Okay, great. Well, that's a huge switch from New York to Roanoke. I mean, that's amazing. That's truly amazing.
Well, I grew up in the countryside of New York, and Roanoke is just right for me. I grew up kind of out in the middle of nowhere in New York State, and it was either out in the country or a big city, and Roanoke is just perfect.
Well, let's talk about what you've been doing down there, because you've been involved. This is your second run for office, right?
Yes.
Okay. So why are you running again?
Well, one of the concerns I had the first time I ran, which I entered the race at the last minute, was I didn't feel that the fellow who was running was going to represent my values or the values of our district. And that was affirmed by his voting record the last 2 years. This time I started much earlier. I graduated from the Sorensen Institute this past January, so I learned how to run a successful campaign, and we are on the path to victory this November.
Okay. And you're running against the same guy that you ran against the last time?
Yes, this is his first time up for re-election. And I think voters, well, I know actually voters are not pleased with his voting record, because we've knocked on over 3,000 doors so far. So we've been out there personally connecting with the voters and finding out what they care about and their disappointment with our current delegate.
Okay, and is that something, let me flip back to you, because Reed, I didn't ask you, are you walking around your district as well?
Right.
So you're doing the door knocking?
Right.
All right, that seems to be the standard sort of thing to get to know the voters when you're a brand new candidate, to try and explain to people who you are in that area. Now, you've got some issues down there with this fella on health care. I mean, he seems to be voting he voted for the TRAP legislation, and he's against the Medicare expansion. Where do you stand on all of those kinds of issues? Let's start with TRAP, because I heard that you were very active in that. Someone told me that you testified at all the different hearings that they did on that, on those regulations and that type of stuff.
Well, it's really important when it comes to health care that the decisions are made through the Board of Health Professionals. Is usually how legislation moves, is the experts and the professionals make recommendations of how they can improve the health care for citizens and for people in the Commonwealth. And then they usually make a recommendation to the governor and to the General Assembly to write legislation. The TRAP regulations came about the opposite way, from the General Assembly through they created the regulations against the recommendations of doctors and lawyers. They ignored evidence-based science, and they legislated their political ideology. And that's against our state constitution. We have the strongest separation of church and state in the nation. And it's very important for us to keep that integrity. And it was so bad this past year that Dr. Karen Remley actually resigned as the Commissioner of Health. And it was a very sad day in our Commonwealth to see the Board of Medicine certify those regulations. They should not have been certified because they're going to do harm to our citizens and the people in our Commonwealth. And it's very sad.
Well, wasn't part of that, if I'm remembering this correctly, Ken Cuccinelli issued some opinion saying if you, Board of Health, go forward and issue the original regulations you were going to, which as I recall were not retroactive, so the existing clinics wouldn't have to meet it, that he wouldn't defend them, his office wouldn't defend them in any lawsuits that came out, which was kind of like, really? Because I'm pretty sure that's your job, but apparently he didn't seem to care.
Well, and that created a lot of confusion. The members of the Board of Medicine, when they signed up, as you know, it's a volunteer position. When I testified as a former peer. I served on a state advisory board under the midwifery board, and you know, that's something that you do because you care about people and you care about the evidence and something that's thoughtful. And those people didn't sign up for what happened this past year. And the last vote, you could see them, how nervous they were and how confused they were. And it was sad.
Yeah. Now, where are you on Medicaid expansion? Because that was another health care issue that a lot of the Republicans in the House of Delegates seem to oppose.
Yes.
And they came up with some kind of jury-rigged, from my perspective, solution to sort of say, well, maybe we can do it if we meet certain criteria, we'll decide it later. It seemed like they were punting. Where are you on that, Freeda?
Well, Medicaid expansion seemed like it should have been obvious to do. It's something that would have stimulated our economy by creating jobs that would have been benefiting people, and it was something the federal government was going to send us funds for. So I don't understand why people voted against that. It was something that would have really helped people.
And Reed, where were you on that?
Well, I agree with Medicaid expansion, and most doctors do, as well as businesses. We put the state at a tremendous disadvantage by delaying it, and you're exactly right. We have delayed it, and I think it's delaying with letting it die a slow death, but we are the ones that are being hurt by that.
Yeah, I've not quite figured that out. As Freeda was saying, the federal government was going to send us the money for it. I was kind of like, wow, you know, 400,000 more people get health care. You create the jobs, as Freeda was saying. I mean, and I've seen estimates at like 30, 40,000 new healthcare jobs in Virginia. That was kind of a no-brainer.
Well, and the dilemma was you allow people to stay in home care, so you're creating jobs and you're keeping down healthcare costs by doing this. And now, you know, without the Medicaid, you're putting them in nursing homes at our expense. So. It's a very strange way to, but it's ideologically based.
Right.
This is a government program, and therefore they view it as something that's going to balloon in cost later on. So.
How do you, Freeda, while you're out on the doors? I mean, do people respond to those kinds of conversations? Are the people in your area concerned about things like the TRAP regulations and Medicare and those types of things?
Well, usually when I'm out in the door, what they're really concerned about is the education funds that we didn't get to our area. There was a potential where we could have had an additional $700,000 worth of funding coming from Richmond to help our local school system, and our delegate didn't do the extra work to have that happen. And that really resonates with people, that that's another resource. You know, we were talking about Medicaid expansion that would have been federal dollars coming to help us, help the state. This was state money that would have come to help the localities. And when we didn't get that funding, Roanoke County Schools had a $500,000 deficit that they had to make up. And people are pretty hot about that.
Well, I would think so, because that really does hit you exactly at home. And as Reed had commented when we were talking about when people come to Virginia, one of the first things you ask if you're buying a house is, how's the school system?
Yeah.
And you can't leave. That's a lot of money to sort of leave on the table to not get.
yes, there's a lot of resources being left on the table, and there are people hurting that need the resources. And we need to send people to Richmond that are going to make the difference and bring those resources home so that we can prosper and thrive. One of the other things that happened this past year that my opponent did was he voted for a $400,000 budget cut to the teen pregnancy centers throughout the state. And one of those teen pregnancy centers was in Roanoke.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. This sounds a lot of not governing. It's sort of all ideological, is what this is sounding like that you've got down there, Freeda. So you're doing well on the doors. You're getting your message out. Someone said to me, and I'm not sure if this is right. Someone said to me that you actually talk about the ERA, which I was kind of surprised about because I didn't think hardly anybody talked about the ERA anymore.
Well, my great-grandmother was a suffragette, so standing up for women's rights goes back through generations in my family. But there's a lot of confusion where people think that the ERA passed, and it didn't pass. There was actually a sunset clause on it, and there's active legislation right now in Congress to move back that deadline on the ERA amendment. And Virginia is one of the states that has not ratified the ERA yet, the Equal Rights Amendment. And that is something that we need to do. We need to do that to preserve that for future generations, that all of our daughters have the same opportunities that our sons do.
Is there a realistic possibility of that? I mean, Virginia seems to have been going backwards in the last year. I mean, we've got the Marshall-Newman Amendment, I think is the name of the civil union. No civil unions are going to be recognized, although, as I read in the paper, the ACLU just filed a lawsuit to have that Constitution, part of the Virginia Constitution, overturned. Based on the recent Supreme Court case. I mean, we don't seem to be going forward here. I guess that's when I look at you guys running for the House of Delegates, I'm like, wow, we got to get a new crew in there because what we're doing right now doesn't seem to be working really well for a whole lot of people.
Well, I think a lot of people are waking up right now in Virginia that these state elections really have consequences and make a difference in people's lives. I was really proud of the work that I did for CHIP of Roanoke Valley, where I was a parent educator. And because of loss of funding, they ended that program. I used to help parents when they got home from the hospital with their newborn babies. And this past year, they cut $1.5 million from early childhood education. And that's an investment. I know Reed was talking earlier about investing in education. Yeah. Well, early childhood education, there was a recent article in our Roanoke Times that showed, there was a study that showed that it reduced welfare costs, mental health needs, and juvenile delinquency while increasing labor force participation.
Well, so we're going to have to leave it there because I hear us going to break. Thank you for being on the show, Freeda. We'll be back.
Too many women get hit by their boyfriends and husbands. Too many women are pressured into having unprotected sex. Half of the people in the world living with AIDS are women. It doesn't have to be this way. Together, we can change this reality. Let's strive for a world free of violence.
At Volunteers of America, we don't just give kids a way to stay off the streets. We give them the tools they need to reach their full potential. We don't just help the elderly receive needed care. We help them live life to the fullest. We don't just provide food for homeless individuals and families. We provide job training and placement so they can buy groceries. Volunteers of America is a national organization that for over 100 years has provided programs and services that allow people to overcome their challenges to become vital members of their community. At Volunteers of America, we don't just help people, we help people help themselves. Find out how you can support the programs that are working in your community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
Drivers face all kinds of distractions.
Guys, stop playing. No. 127 consecutive.
Before your wireless phone becomes one of them, stop. Drive safely. Keep your phone in easy reach and dial sensibly. In bad weather or traffic, call later and use a hands-free device. Remember, with wireless, safety is your call.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Bettina Lawton. I'm your host, and this is Inside Scoop Virginia. And we are switching a little bit. We are still doing, as I said at the top of the hour, the newbies in the race. But we're switching off of House of Delegates for just this segment to talk about law enforcement. Here in Fairfax County and across Virginia, I guess, everybody elects the sheriff. And this is not a year when we should be electing a sheriff, but the sheriff in Fairfax resigned, retired, he did something. And so we're having a special election. And last week, the Democrats got together to pick their nominee. There were two people running. The interim sheriff was running, and one of the deputy sheriffs was running. And the winner was Stacey Kincaid, the deputy sheriff who was running, Captain Kincaid. She won by a vote of 605 to 351, so it was really an amazing win. And we've got Stacey here with us tonight. So welcome to the show, Stacey.
Well, thank you, Bettina, for having me on the show.
So how does it feel to have become the Democratic nominee?
I am very overwhelmed by it. I'm also very excited, and I look forward to campaigning with Terry McAuliffe, Ralph Northam, and Mark Herring, as well as the House of Delegate candidates.
Well, now, you had, one of the things that I noticed in your race was the unions got involved. And there was a little police union who endorsed your opponent, but otherwise all the unions were lining up with you, the deputy sheriffs, the firefighters, SEIU, which I guess represents civilian county employees as opposed to the uniformed ones. So why do you think all the unions were coming your way?
Well, in reference to the police union, I certainly would have liked to have the opportunity to participate in their endorsement process, but never received an invite. Nevertheless, we still work together, but having the endorsement from the sheriff's office, our employees union, was huge because these are the frontline employees, and it certainly was huge to receive that. In addition to our firefighters, who I've had the opportunity to work with over the years in a different capacity, and our service employees international union as well. So I'm very proud of those endorsements.
Well, let's talk about you a little bit. You graduated from Frostburg State back in 1987, and as I understand it, because I went to the debates and I went to the caucus, you did an internship with the sheriff's office, and then you went straight to the sheriff's office as a deputy sheriff. Is that how this works? You go in as a deputy sheriff?
Well, when I graduated from Frostburg State, as you mentioned, in 1987, I had previously, right before my senior year of college, participated in a college internship with the sheriff's office. And then graduating May 8th of 87, a month later, June 8th of 87, I was working at the sheriff's office as a new recruit. So then I went to the Public Safety Academy, and here I am today, 26 years later. 26 years later. That must have been something. I mean, back in the day, in the mid-'80s, I was practicing law and was practicing defending people who were being investigated by the federal government, actually, and frequently was the only woman in the room when things were going on. I have to imagine when you started out in law enforcement 26 years ago that there were not tons of women there with you. How has that progressed? Has it gotten better over the years? Has it changed? What's that like? What's that like? Well, it's very challenging, and women were underrepresented back in the late 80s. We have made progress in terms of moving women through the ranks, but we still have work to do. And I do recall that after I graduated from our academy, my mother back then was the first one who said, you know, you could be the first female sheriff of Fairfax County. So it's very interesting right now. Excellent. Very exciting. And you will be. If you get elected in November, you will be the first female sheriff in Fairfax, which will be an historic event. I think there are only 3 or 4 other ones in all of Virginia, actually. That's correct.
So we would finally, Fairfax would finally be sort of moving ourselves forward. Although we're surrounded by them. I think Herndon has a police chief who's a woman, and Arlington's sheriff is a woman.
Arlington and Falls Church City has a police chief, female police chief.
And obviously the female police chief in D.C., Kathy Lanier. So it sounds like we're taking over the place, actually.
Well, it's very exciting that we're now having that opportunity.
Well, let me ask you this, because the sheriff's department or the sheriff's office, most people, when they think of the sheriff, they are going to think of the movies and the rural sheriffs, and you're out there on the side of the road investigating dead bodies in ditches. And is that what the sheriff's department in Fairfax and Fairfax City, because it is both Fairfaxes, is that what the sheriff's department does up here?
It is not. In Fairfax County, as well as the city, the sheriff is responsible for managing the adult detention center and providing security for our courthouse and serving civil law process. So we have those three core functions that we do well. We also have community outreach programs within our agency where we're able to do, aside from our core functions, things on the outside.
Okay, but you're not the investigative.
We are not.
Person.
Right,
okay.
That's the police department, which we support their efforts and work very well with them.
Now, if you, assuming you get elected in November, what's the first thing you'll do as sheriff?
Well, I have said this on many occasions, and I'm going to say it again. Our employees are very important, and they're the biggest asset that we have within the agency, and signing the civil service agreement is my #1 plan when I get into office. And what that does is that lets our employees know that they are protected from any unjust cause for being separated from service, in other words, being terminated for no reason, as well as it protects our staff from any kind of political intervention or inappropriate behavior as such. So it's essentially, it's another step in ensuring that we take care of our staff.
Okay. Now, I'd also heard in one of these debates, you talk about being a health and safety officer, that you were the first one that the agency had. What is all of that? What does a health and safety officer do in the context of a sheriff's department?
Right. That position was implemented from our sheriff's union, and I was appointed as the first occupational health and safety officer as well as peer support coordinator. And it was an honor to be picked by our sheriff at the time, and this was a position that was we created a health and safety program to ensure that our staff was kept safe and that they had the proper personal protective equipment that they would need in terms of our daily responsibilities.
Okay, and is this something that you just sort of put it together? Did that involve any other agencies? Did you have to work with other folks to do this, or is this all just within the sheriff's department?
No, actually, one of our firefighters, Captain John Nemec, who's the union president of Local 2068, was very instrumental in helping me get this program off the ground. I also worked with other police officers as well as medical professionals in the field, and our risk management and our staff, and it truly became and is a very good program. Again, it's all about taking care of our troops.
Well, other than the jail, and we haven't had any breakouts, so I guess we're doing that one okay. And we haven't had, I mean, I've read of some of these other courthouses in other parts of Virginia where people have been attacked and all sorts of horrible things. We don't have any of that problems. So what other kinds of things does the Sheriff's Department do on this sort of community outreach? Because you've talked about doing more outreach into the community. What do you do so far? What does the office do so far?
So far, we have several programs that I have been in a position where I've had the opportunity to either implement or expand. We have our Shop with the Sheriff program, which I've raised money through fundraising as well as through corporate donations. And what that does is it allows us to take children who are currently living in homeless shelters shopping at the beginning of the school year, so they have the needed supplies as well as clothing, and they're able to go to school, you know, with their peers and It's a really big deal, and it really helps out. I've also expanded our child safety seat program. That program was originally scheduled on various times throughout the year, and I established the Child Safety Seat Saturday, where it was the last Saturday of every month, which gave parents, grandparents, sitters, anyone that was going to transport a child in their vehicle the opportunity to ensure that their safety seat was installed properly and their child was safe in it.
And that's what I see that on the news, and you always see it when it's bad, when somebody didn't do it right and there's an accident, and
it's tragic. The
seat you thought was going to protect your child just becomes, the thing that's propelling them, and it's good to hear about. Let me ask you something about immigrants, because Prince William got a lot of notoriety. Prince William County got a lot of notoriety about sort of profiling their undocumented people in their county. What is the Sheriff's Office position on that? What do you all do?
We follow the law, and we are involved in the Safe Communities program. And we also have an MOU, which is a Memorandum of Understanding with immigration. And when an individual comes in, they're already arrested and brought into our facility. When it's determined that they are here on an undocumented status, then immigration is the agency that takes over and does the investigation.
Okay, so you're not involved in arresting them and all
of
that other stuff where the profiling happened down in Prince William?
We are not.
Okay. Well, what are the other kinds of things that you want to do when you become sheriff? You've talked about doing some outreach. You're going to sign the civil service agreement. There was some conversation at some point about promotion practices. Both you and the current sheriff seem to think that that was a problem. Are you looking at making revisions in that area?
I am. Our current process is, and has been for many years, very subjective. And it needs to be fair, it needs to be inclusive, and it needs to be, we have to have some established criteria which lets candidates know what is expected of them in order to become successful in the process. It also has to be transparent. So that is one of the second initiatives that I plan on doing, is changing the process that up until recently has come out, and it's been determined that it's now something we need to work on when this has been a problem for years.
Okay.
So,
and in the last 30 seconds that we've got here, you had also talked about financial prudence or fiscal responsibility. What's that with the Sheriff's Department? What are you talking about there?
Well, as a sheriff, you would want to go into an agency and ensure that you are reviewing the current expenditures, the current contracts, and the way that we do business, and make sure that it's responsible and that we are being cost efficient, and taxpayers are, their money is going towards helping us achieve that.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming.
Well, thank you very much.
We are going to break, and we'll be right back.
Around the world, 1 out of every 3 women will be beaten or otherwise abused in their lifetime, often by a family member or loved one. A future free from violence. It's all she's ever wished for.
Did you know you have the power to stop children from joining gangs? You can help a father find a job and home for his family. You can assist a woman who can't afford the medicine she needs to live and the home she can't live without. You can choose to make a difference in our community. Support Volunteers of America, and you can help improve the lives of nearly 2 million Americans each year, with programs and services that help individuals and families overcome their challenges to become as independent as possible. Support the programs that are working in our community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
For some folks, saving for the future is easy, but for you, it might take a little more effort. Saving for your future is your responsibility, and there's a lot to save for.
I never thought of that.
Like your child's education, perhaps uncovered medical expenses, or just to be sure you can live the way you want when you retire. The time is now to save for tomorrow. Save now or work forever. The choice is yours. Choose to save.
She's had more than a dozen fractures. And she's had more than a dozen fractures.
Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop.
Welcome back. I'm Bettina Lawton and I'm your host. This is Inside Scoop, Virginia. And we are back on House of Delegate races with another brand new candidate who is running in Fairfax, some in Fairfax, I think some in Loudoun, and it's Nguyen. And welcome, you're in the District 67.
67.
You've got an incumbent Republican who's gotten reelected a couple of times, Jim LeMunyon. So let's talk about who you are. You've got a BA in Psychology and Philosophy from St. John's College Seminary, and you're currently completing your MBA at Western Governors University.
Correct.
You're a small business owner, and I read somewhere that you have lived the American dream. So I wanted to ask you, what does that actually mean?
The American dream. I came here in 1975 as a political refugee as a little child. I was about 4 years old. 1975, as many folks know, the Vietnam War ended, and we fought, in this case, on the wrong side. Or on the right side, depending whose thought process it is. But we left Vietnam, escaped communism, came to the United States like many other refugees. We were supported by charity and social work. We were given a hand up in our community. We were able to study, work hard. My parents worked in sweatshop in Los Angeles where we would sew buttons on shirts. You clip the threads off of them, you would get 2 or 3 pennies per button that you sew. You get a penny or so for the thread that you cut on shirts that they sell. And so we went from there. We studied hard, got some Pell Grants, went to college, graduated. Now I started my own business. And so for us, that is living the American dream. Being able to be in a new country with literally nothing but the clothes on your back, working hard, striving like all other immigrants before us. And now I own a home, I have a small business, I have a 3-year-old child, Thomas, married to my wife. We live here in Fairfax County. And so for me, that is part of the American dream. Even owning the home is part of the dream for many folks. And unfortunately, the last few years, some folks have lost their homes due to the housing crisis. But we're fortunate enough that we're still here and that I'm running for office. As a person who escaped communism, I'm now have the privilege of hopefully serving in the oldest democratic institution in the United States, where Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, all these founding fathers of democracy in Western society, we get to be a part of that. And so for me, that is the American dream.
That is quite the circle.
It is.
Escaping communism and then getting around to the House of Delegates. That's a great story. That's a great story. Now, how long have you been in Virginia?
I've been in Virginia since December 2001. I moved here for my wife, who grew up in the area, and Jung grew up in the area as a Korean American woman. She had friends that I knew when we lived in other parts of the country. When I lived in other parts of the country, she grew up with them, and they introduced us in California. Now we're all living back here in the Fairfax area, and so it's a very small world. But I came here in 2001.
Well, now, what made you decide to run for office? That's a big leap of faith for a lot of folks, particularly when you're running against an incumbent. That's a tough job. What made you decide?
I believe in community service. I believe in giving back to our community. As part of my journey of the American dream, it's giving back, because so many folks have given something to me. For Christmas, when we didn't have anything, some of the charitable organizations gave us presents. They gave us gift when we had nothing, and I appreciate that. And so Giving back means I like paying my taxes. I have no problem paying my taxes. I just don't like paying a lot, but I like paying a little bit of my taxes to make sure that other folks who are new immigrants also have their opportunities, or even other Americans who are not necessarily new immigrants, but who, because economic times, have some hardships. So we want to make sure that we share with one another, with our neighbors. And so I'm running for office because, not because I want to be a politician, because I want to continue the community service that I've done over the years. I've been on the Consumer Protection Commission for Fairfax County for about 9 years. I was on the Governor's Commission for the Asian American Advisory Board for the Corporation for National Community Service, which oversaw AmeriCorps. Part of my journey, I studied at St. John's Seminary because I studied to be a Catholic priest. Spent 11 years of my life studying to be a Catholic priest. So it is a part of my being to give to community. I've actually had to cut back how much I give to community in terms of writing a check, time and labor, now that I have a family, that I have to also be focused on them. And so running for office is not about me being a politician for the next 10, 20 years, but it's about very concrete things in my community. Fixing the traffic, making sure that folks are able to go from their home to Costco in a timely manner and not just be sitting there on traffic on Route 50.
Right, because you've got a tough district when it comes to traffic. You've got some of the horrible gridlock all day.
And all day, and there's no reason for it, other than there's a construction going on Route 50, the widening of Route 50 near 28 for the last 4 or 5 years. Nobody knows why. Why can't it be done in a year or so? Now that we're talking about roundabouts possibly on other areas, or the widening of 28, which feeds into Route 50, we're just creating more traffic versus let's get rid of the traffic we have first, then start another construction project. So that way at least people have a way around it. Okay. And so those are very concrete things that I want to do something about. I also have a 3-year-old child. I'm fortunate to have a job where I can pay for my son to go to kindercare. Unfortunately, there's other members of our community who cannot afford to do that. And so realistically, by the time my child and other kids go to kindergarten, my son may be more advanced than other kids. He may know his ABCs and 1, 2, 3s more so than the others. We speak Spanish, Korean, and Vietnamese at home with our child. And so the other day my son says, Appa, which is Korean for daddy. He says, Appa, look, they speak Spanish like us. And some folks stared at us. I said, well, you know, this is our household, but this is our neighborhood. And so this is an opportunity for us to make sure that there's an equalization of some sort for all children. So that way, as they grow older, whether you study and do your homework or not and get lazy, that's a choice. But as a young child who has not a choice, then we should make sure that they have equal access to at least the beginning of their life's education.
So I take it then that you're a big supporter of the pre-K, because they cut a lot of pre-K money.
Yes.
That I know was one of the big initiatives that Governor Kane had, now Senator Kane, and that was one of the initiatives that got cut in the last several budget.
And I am very much for pre-K because we have to make hard decisions. All our families have to make hard decisions. If we have extra income, we can make a decision where we're going to go to King's Dominion, go watch a movie, which is about $20 or $30 now.
I know.
Or do we invest it back in our community in a positive way? And I rather make those hard decisions to invest in our community for our future workforce, because we can't talk about Northern Virginia being an IT hub, providing qualified workers for the federal government or even these other consulting firms if people are not qualified. They don't know their basic math and arithmetics. This testing of SOLs, you know, testing just to pass an exam is ridiculous. We should be educating our children so that way they know the basics and they can think it through the problems and they can solve the problems. And if we just focus on those, and I would think that would also create less tension for teachers who are trying to just push students through to pass an exam.
Well, that is certainly something that I hear a lot from the teachers, is this teaching to the test. You end up with people who can memorize, kids who can memorize, but as you say, starting here and analyzing your way through the variables, that you don't get credit for that on an SOL test.
No, you don't. And passing an SOL test, unfortunately, will not prepare you for life. It will not allow you to think through and solve a problem.
Right. Now, what do you think about this legislation that got passed? I find this a fascinating idea, where they're now going to give a single alphabet grade to our schools, and then they're going to create an infrastructure within the state to take over schools if you don't meet their criteria. So it seems to me we're going from testing the students, testing the teachers, now we're testing entire schools with really big consequences to it.
Well, that sounds to me like big government.
Yeah.
That sounds like, you know, some folks in Richmond wanting to take over schools because obviously they have a lot of time on their hand to take over schools and dictate to schools, local schools, which, like in Fairfax, what to do. One, I understand the criteria are not really well set. Two, who are these experts who are going to come in and take over these schools and run them better than somebody else? I mean, that's just more regulation. I prefer less regulation. I prefer that people have the skill sets to have measurable results versus somebody else imposing another rule, another dictate that you need to do X, Y, Z. And probably these folks who pass these laws were never teachers. They don't understand what it is to actually work with a student where the parents may not be there to help them do the homework because they're too busy working or they're too busy stuck in traffic. My wife goes to work and she has to leave at about 5:45 every morning. Just make sure that, you know, she catches the metro. Again, we need to focus on very concrete solutions in this area. Instead of, you know, these grandiose things, let's just focus. So instead of talking about these schools are going to have a grade, one, that means are we going to be hiring more folks who are going to go do the grading of these schools? I thought we have a budget issue. And what is wrong with the current system that we can't just fix it or adjust it versus creating a new regulation and system of check and balances?
Well, one of the things that I know your opponent did, because I thought this was like absurd, was when you talk about let's sort of focus on the basic things that we need. I believe he was one of the ones who wanted us to mint our own money or have some kind of alternative currency or something.
Yeah, I mean, the last time Virginia had its own currency, I believe, was during the Civil War. At the end of the Civil War, you need a boatload of money, literally, to buy a loaf of bread. Again, I thought we're about good government, not expanding government. And so why would we want to print our own money in Virginia? I mean, $16,000, $17,000 is the cost of that study. That's $16,000 to $17,000 that can buy a few road signs that would increase safety and reduce accidents on our roadway. Or $16,000, $17,000, that's a few pennies that we don't have to pay in taxes.
Sure. Now, where do you stand in our last minute here on the transportation bill that got passed? Would you have voted for that?
I believe that we need more money for transportation here in Northern Virginia, but I definitely don't think that we should be overtaxed, which the transportation bill has taxed more Northern Virginians. And also the sneak attack about folks who have the hybrid. They need to pay more. I think that's just unfair. That would be one of the first bills that I would introduce, is to repeal the hybrid tax.
The hybrid tax part. Yeah, there was a lot of controversy over that bill, and it's sort of held out as this great bipartisan compromise. But what it seemed to me was there's lots of people who hate lots of different positions in that bill. Well, I want to thank you for coming on.
Right,
it was wonderful to talk with you. And we will be back in a couple of weeks with another show. I hope you enjoyed this one with our House of Delegate candidates. And please go vote. State elections do matter. November 5th. Come out and vote for our great candidates. Thanks for being here.